So as we're still settling in, I have most of my photo books still in moving boxes here in the studio. But there are two books that I have spent a good amount of time with, essentially in the evenings or anytime I had a few minutes to just squeeze in a little bit of reading, and those are the two books that I really want to share with you today. So thank you all for joining me. Welcome back. Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace, but we'll talk more about them at the end of this video. The two books I really want to share are The Photographer's Playbook, edited by Jason Fulford and Gregory Halpern, published by Aperture, and the second book is Photo No-Nos, edited by Jason Fulford alone and also published by Aperture. These are two little paperback books that are just full of essays and ideas and great food for thought. As much as we spend time looking or reading photo books where we're, looking at the visuals of photography and we're taking in all of that, stuff like this, the food for thought that really gets you thinking, stuff like this gets overlooked really easily because people have very little attention spans these days. But if you're a photographer who actually cares about this and you want to improve and you're trying to just do anything you can to progress, and maybe you're in a creative rut as well, these two books alone, I think, could do a lot of good. So I want to share, a few of my favorite things, show what these books are really about and why I love them so much. The first book I want to talk about out of the two is the book that came first. This is The Photographer's Playbook, and I think out of these two books, if you're looking for a book to help with the creative rut or just looking for ways to improve as a photographer and sort of self-assign, this is definitely the one for that. The book is full of different assignments and ideas and essays from tons of different photographers and photography professionals from all over the world. There's a lot of things I love about this book, but I love just the simplicity, the practicality of the advice. Sometimes I think art and talking about art and giving guidance for art can be so vague and just empty, like blanket statements. Good practical advice is invaluable, and this book has stuff on shooting, on editing, on coming up with project ideas and how to kind of work on that. For me, that is huge. It seems simple, but just good practical advice, it goes a long way. Storytelling with Pictures by Jane Evelyn Atwood. Telling a story with pictures is just like writing with words. Something is seen or thought of or imagined. I would like you to tell a story with images that you make and put together one after another to recount something, be it abstract, conceptual, documentary, or journalistic. You can follow one person, a group, a place, inside or out. It can be vast or very small. It can be realistic or abstract. It can be something real, an idea, a fantasy, an emotion. You should use no more than 8 photos, no fewer than 5. Each image must add something that hasn't yet been seen in the images that precede it. The selection should be coherent. This to me just feels like some kind of like fun board game, with all of the stipulations and rules there at the end. This one here is just simple, practical. There are rules and guidelines, so you have something to follow. I honestly would love to revisit this in a video where I approach doing something like this and just sort of like work out the exercise and, think out loud in the process. If you'd like to see that, let me know in the comments because this one has been like on my mind ever since I first read it. Step Out of Your Shoes by Frisch Brandt. In the first many years of my art life, I was largely drawn to finding the work of artists who spoke to me, artists who were asking similar questions to my own, artists who used the colors or the lines or the subject that I found resonant. In time, however, I found that the artists that most inspire me are the ones I am not friendly with, and the exhibitions that I learn the most from are the ones of artists I don't really fancy. Artists whose work I haven't sought out or read about. Those are the ones I want you to think about. In fact, if you can, go to a museum or a library and find your way to work that is unfamiliar, that you don't really like very much, that doesn't sing in your key. That's where I want you to be and just be with it. Don't think too much, just get close to it. Breathe for a while. Stop the monkey mind of I don't like this, never liked this, I remember hearing blah 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 about the artist, and just look. Because you know what? Your current favorite artist is someone else's least favorite artist. After you've spent a long time with this artist, go out and try to make something in the way that this artist might have. We spend a lot of time trying to perfect our own aesthetic high-wire walk, but there is much to be said for trying someone else's. It is in that you can find your true balance, your true creative gait. I really like this one because this is something I've tried to do as much as I can myself, especially with photo books. What I like to do is, try to find something that doesn't really jump out to me, something that, I'm not really interested in, but other people seem to really like and really respond to. I'm trying to figure out, like, what is it that I'm missing? And at times, spending more time with that work, then it starts to make sense, and then it finally kind of like unlocks something. Other times, I spend more time with it, and after, months of, revisiting it over and over again, it still doesn't really click for me. So for this to actually try and, approach something the same way someone would, that's a really interesting exercise, because just looking at the work and, sort of judging it in that way, that's one thing. But to try and put yourself in the photographer's shoes and try to do what they were doing, that's a whole different thing. And finally, one of my favorites, Discomfort by Katie Grannon. Get comfortable with discomfort. There are so many ways to do this. It doesn't even have to involve making a photograph. When I was in graduate school, after our weekly critiques, a bunch of us would go out and get drunk and do karaoke together, visiting artists included. We all looked and sounded like asses, but most important, it reminded us to have fun and be stupid and have a life outside of making art. School can be an incredibly intimidating place. I'd never studied art until I went to graduate school, and I spent 2 years terrified of the potential for humiliation. My work mattered more than anything I'd ever done, but you have to work to make mistakes. Sometimes you need to make terrible work to really get somewhere. Failure can make you brave. The good work will come over time, and of course, you'll still feel terrified because hopefully you're always risking something. Otherwise, why bother? That's why you need a sense of humor and humility, because in the end, we're all beggars here. I love this one because this is something I think anyone can relate to. Me personally, maybe a year or two before this YouTube channel was the first time I really started to share personal work, pictures that I took just because I wanted to take the picture. That's it. Before that, anything that I shared, it was mostly just portfolio stuff, things that I was shooting professionally at the time to get more work, whether it be music or weddings, headshots or corporate stuff, that kind of thing. And when you start just sharing pictures that you have been making all these years and things that you like to shoot, it's a weird feeling. It was before this thing that was so sacred and close to the chest, and putting out, pretty pictures of other people and, smiles and happy faces, all that kind of stuff, that's whatever. But putting out something that, you actually care about, that's scary, really, really scary. To this day, I still struggle with sharing anything, but at the same time, I realize that, it doesn't matter. Everybody out there, we're all making pictures. We're all just trying to make something. That's all it really is. And if people like it, great. If they don't like it, who cares? It doesn't matter. You have to just try and make something. When you need that extra just push forward to just tell yourself to shut up. I mean, that's what the book does for me. But if you just need that extra little bit of just that push, this is a really, really good one. The other book we're going to look at is Photo No-Nos. And as much as I love The Photographer's Playbook, I think I like Photo No-Nos the most, simply because it's just full of essays of photographers dunking on themselves. The book pokes fun at photographers. We poke fun at ourselves and the sort of cliches and things that we've all done. The park benches, the railroad tracks, all of that stuff, we've all been there. Similar to The Photographer's Playbook, there were tons of photographers and photography professionals that contributed to the book. And as funny as the book is, there is also some really, beautiful and heartfelt kind of food for thought. So I'm going to share a few of my favorites from this one as well. Beds by Nelson Chan. My coming of age as a photographer was during what I'd call the Soth years. I had seen Alex's first solo show at Yossi Milo Gallery and his install at the 2004 Whitney Biennial, bought the first edition of Sleeping by the Mississippi, and heard him lecture at RISD where I was a student. These were formative experiences that had me photographing with a large format camera and occasionally looking at beds for photographic fodder. Around this time, I also began photographing my parents and their partnership between New Jersey and Hong Kong. One morning during my first year of grad school, while I was home in New Jersey to see my mom and to make some photographs for Crit, I photographed my mother's slightly unmade bed, the left side virtually untouched while the right was tossed open. Up until then, I never knew which side of the bed she slept on. Once that picture was made, I decided to avoid photographing beds for this project. I was in grad school after all. As an artist, I needed to start figuring out where my influences ended and where I began. Luckily, I left with this one sheet of exposed 8x10 film with some serious potential. I avoided photographing beds for another 8 years until one morning in Hong Kong, I got a glimpse of my father's slightly unmade bed. The right side was tucked and neat while the left side was unfurled from the night before. It was revelatory to discover and record these intimate and idiosyncratic habits of my parents. This was photography's way of revealing new knowledge to the maker while also showing a son how his parents remained together but apart. It was worth breaking the rules for. I think that's a healthy thing to like set some kind of balance or boundary for yourself, where you're like, all right, I'm not gonna make this cliche picture. I'm gonna avoid doing something like that because I need to work on that. Like that's a good healthy thing, but there at the end, it was worth breaking the rules for, making pictures of his parents. Like make the picture. Don't worry about what anyone's gonna think of it. Just always make the picture. And finally, because I have no idea how long this video is going to be, this is Self-Policing by David Campany. I am fond of photographers chastising notes to self. It tells me they are reflective people. Don't be too arty, don't take shortcuts, avoid the obvious, pursue the art, be as efficient as possible, be as obvious as possible. They never add up. And yet self-policing presumes too many things. It presumes you think you know exactly what you're doing. It presumes that a bad decision or a wrong image won't lead you to a good or right image if you keep pushing. In psychoanalysis, the imperative is to stop policing yourself, to say the first thing that comes into your head without being embarrassed and to see where it might lead. The artist and writer Victor Bergen once recalled that students would come into tutorials saying things like, "Don't get me wrong, I like the theory I am learning, and I like the critical thinking, but I can't take pictures anymore. I'm always asking myself if my images are correct, if they are acceptable, if they are what I should be doing. Has it been done before? Is it a cliche? Am I repeating myself?" What was Bergen's constant reply? Shoot first, ask questions later. I'm inclined to agree. Self-policing may be the most disabling thing a photographer can do. This isn't to say that photographers should allow themselves to do things they know aren't good, or keep on mindlessly when their work is going nowhere. But when does the question of self-policing actually come up? When does it raise itself as an issue, as a conscious dilemma for a photographer? It tends to come up in moments of doubt or uncertainty, and in those moments, the best thing a photographer can do is to tell the inner police to leave, so that the photography might continue. Shoot first, ask questions later. In photography, there is image capture, and then comes the review of what has been done, the post-production, the printing, editing, sequencing, and so on. This is the later, when the questions can be asked. And even at those stages, if there are moments of doubt, just do it. You can always undo it. That, for me, is one of the things that I've struggled with more than anything when it comes to photography, is just self-policing. In my head, as I'm looking, I'm already telling myself all of the things that I don't want to hear. Doesn't matter, you're not adding anything to the conversation, this looks bad anyway, why'd you even pick up your camera to begin with? All of those things come flooding in and I'm left just going, yeah, probably not worth it, I'll just keep looking. And I would just be window shopping for pictures all day long for weeks at times. Just window shopping, not actually making any pictures, just looking at everything. And sometimes that can be a healthy break, but when it's crippling, it's the worst. So again, just one more push to end the day. Just keep going, keep making pictures. I hope you guys enjoyed this look at these two books today. I hope it was good food for thought for you. If you're interested in either of these, I'm going to put links down below, and I'm curious to hear what your own photo no-nos are. So if you have any of your own things that you consider like off limits, I'd love to hear about that down below. And I'll also put a card up at the top of the screen with a couple of the most recent videos from last week, just getting back into the swing of things after taking a month off in February. It's great to be back. Thank you all so much for all the love and support. It's been great. But now it's time to tell you about our sponsor today, which is Squarespace. When it came time to launch mattdayphoto.com, I wanted to be able to control everything and change anything myself on the fly just to have the most flexibility. So that's why I signed up with Squarespace years before they ever sponsored this channel, because they truly are the best. No matter what you need, it's all built right into Squarespace's service. So if you need to show your portfolio or run an online store, send out an email newsletter, everything you need is all in one place. It's also super easy to find a template that works for you, and then you can further customize it to your own needs. Of course, as easy as everything is, Squarespace is always there to help. They have 24/7 award-winning customer service, so if you ever need help with anything, just give them a shout. If you want to give Squarespace a try and see how you like it, you can do that entirely free at squarespace.com. But when you're ready to launch your website, go to squarespace.com/mattday. That'll get you 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Not only does it save you some money, it also supports the channel, so thank you, and thank you to Squarespace.